Hello, everyone. I'd like to call to order the February 12th, 2020 Chaska Planning Commission meeting. Welcome, everyone. We'll start with the roll call. Liz, please.
Bovee,
Here.
Cross,
Here.
Urbanski,
Here.
Seiler,
Here.
Lacey, Brass,
Here.
Olson,
Here.
Riley,
Here.
and Chairperson Dalkey.
Here. Thank you, Liz. Now I'd like to take a motion to adopt our agenda for tonight.
Also move.
Commissioner Cross. And Commissioner Olson with seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we have adopted the agenda. Okay, next is a visitor presentation. Now, this is for anyone, or for anything that's not already on tonight's agenda. So if you want to talk about something that's not on the agenda, now's the time. All right, hearing nothing, we will move on to approving last month's minutes. The draft from the January 8th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Brass and Urbanski. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Item 6, consent items. We don't have any consent items tonight, so we'll move on to item 7, which is our action item. 7A, recommend the approval of the concept plan for Chaska Bluffs, second edition, DDK Construction PC number 2020-D4. Liz, it's all yours.
Thank you, members of the Planning Commission. I'm just gonna get my presentation up here. All right. So we have a concept plan application in front of you for Chaska Bluffs Second Edition that's located in Southwest Chaska. To give you an understanding of kind of where the project site is located, I've included a aerial map exhibit on here to give you some reference. So again, it's in the Southwest Chaska area. The main access to gain access into the site is going to be coming from our newest collector road in Southwest Chaska, known as Savannah Way. You'll take that northerly off of County Road 44, which I apologize is cut off on this aerial, but you take that collector road up to basically the entrance of the Harvest development into the site. And Deer Trail is a stub street right now, which provides access into the development we're looking at. So to kind of refresh your memory, DDK, who are the applicants and developer tonight, did their first edition just north of the site. They final platted that a couple years ago. And that was for detached villa lots off of Harrow Cove. And that kind of connects into the Harvest development as well. The southern site was basically put on hold until they could further evaluate stormwater needs out there. So we are going through kind of the start of our three-step process with the city, which starts with concept plan. So this is the very first look at this addition and what's being proposed there. And if all goes well tonight, they'll move on to their preliminary and final approvals. They've included kind of a site forces or analysis of the site in terms of some views into and out of the site. So a majority, or I should say some portion of the site was used for agricultural purposes out there. As of late, you'll see some cropland associated in that area. Otherwise, the majority of the site is bounded by our wooded steep slope or bluff area, as well as some other treed areas as well. So to give you a refresher on kind of all the approvals that have subsequently taken place before where we're at now, it was in April of 2016 that the concept plan came in for a portion of the Harvest development, which also included the first edition of Chaska Bluffs off of Harrow Cove. And then after that, well, actually during that time, it was evaluated that the area off of Deer Trail would be put on hold for concept plan approval until the stormwater work was further analyzed. And then subsequent to all of that, in December of 2017, the preliminary plat and rezoning for Chaska Bluffs first was approved, and then subsequent to that, March of 2018, the final plat for Chaska Bluffs was approved. So they're currently building and constructing those detached villas out there right now on Harrow Cove. So again, we're looking at a concept plan request tonight from DDK Construction to propose 17 single-family lots off of Deer Trail. So the 17 lots extend off of Deer Trail, which stubs off today where you see on this aerial exhibit here. That will provide access to the 17 lots via a cul-de-sac. The overall site is 22 acres in size, and that includes everything that's in green and what's being shown in the lots and cul-de-sac area. So the total area is 22 acres in size. However, the area that's actually being developed is 8 acres out of those 22 acres. And 4 of those are the agricultural area that was previously cultivated land, and then another 4 is basically wooded area within that overall site. So 8 acres are being developed, 14 acres are being dedicated to the city for tree preservation needs and stormwater ponding needs. The lots that they're proposing out here are a little bit different to the ones that you find in the harvest. They are planning for larger lots along this site to be more of a custom build type home. So they're proposing 85 to 100 foot wide lots, and in comparison to the harvest lots, those range from about 65 to 70 feet wide, and then the detached villa lots to the north are about 60 feet wide. So these are much larger lots, and they were intentional in that decision-making, given kind of the context of the area being more wooded and abutting the bluff. They felt that custom homes seemed to fit the overall context out there. They're also showing ponding on the north and south sides, a smaller pond on the north, a smaller pond on the north side, and then a larger pond on the south side, with access being gained from the overall development. Much of the site is wooded steep slopes, so 18% grade or steeper. There are a couple portions that are not considered 18% wooded steep slopes. However, they are planning to preserve those areas due to the nature of the trees out there, which I can show in our tree preservation plan coming up later. So the plan that they landed on tonight was of a few different iterations that they've explored for the site. Back when they were originally looking at the site, they explored a 24-lot layout that had 2 cul-de-sacs and extended much more into the wooded area and bluff area. So in comparison, they did land on a more modest plan with only 17 lots. So this exhibit kind of shows the disturbance differences between the original plan versus the one they're proposing tonight. They decided to go with the more modest plan so that they could preserve more trees along the eastern and southern areas of the site, as well as provide adequate utilities for the lots being proposed. Here's another iteration of the concept plan, a little bit more simpler approach here. The total distance of the road length being provided into the site is 665 feet long. They will be proposing sidewalks on both sides of the street, which is standard for development. One item of note that we provided in the report is where they are providing pond access to both the stormwater ponds. We did ask that this be evaluated a little bit further in terms of where the least invasive routes to these ponds can actually occur. Specifically on the north side, it appears that these access points are a lot longer than they need to be. So looking at other options of where the pond access can occur, but have the least invasive route into the site. We also noted that these access points should be on their own outlots or city-owned areas and not going through private lots, through side yards. It does become a little bit more difficult between the city and the private property owners in terms of the limitations that are implicated on those lots if they're through side yards. So we've asked that those be created into their own city-owned lots to basically mitigate any confusion or concerns that future residents and city crew members might have with that. We've also noted that these pond accesses cannot encroach into that 30-foot no-grade setback that's required from the bluff edge, so they will need to revise that on their final plan when they come back through, or I'm sorry, on their preliminary plan when they come back for that. The other thing to note is not only will these be pond maintenance accesses for city crews, but they will provide access into the bluff area if anyone so chooses to want to access that area. It is a beautiful area back there, a nice connection into nature for the neighborhoods, so they will also serve a purpose to be able to do that. And then lastly, we did evaluate a couple dump areas in the bluff areas, which is not uncommon or what we tend to see when we do a walkthrough of some of these sites with bluff areas or natural areas. They do tend to be convenient areas for dumps. So we've noted two different areas near the site that will have to be evaluated and cleaned up as a part of this development. And those are both denoted by these red stars on the plan. The tree preservation plan, so they did provide that in this concept plan, which isn't very typical, but since it is a pretty hefty topic with this site, they did choose to provide that as a part of the concept plan. So we've been able to look at that and evaluate that in terms of the impacts that the overall development has in terms of trees. So based on the tree preservation plan or tree plan that they've put together, they will be removing 42 significant trees. And when we say significant, it's trees, overstory trees of 12-inch caliber or more. So they will be removing 42 of those size calibers. And within those 42 trees, the majority of those are cottonwoods, box elders, and aspens. 12 of those are oak trees, which average out at 15-inch caliber size trees. They have denoted that 85 significant trees are going to be saved, the ones that are not encumbered by wooded steep slope. So these are trees that are not protected by ordinance, but we have always stressed an importance in tree preservation on sites in addition to what ordinance typically saves. So they are proposing to save 85 significant trees that are outside of the wooded steep slope delineations. And a majority of those are actually oaks. So again, that's kind of why they prioritize the eastern and southern areas. We did find a lot more oaks in that area, so it appeared to be the most significant or more of a priority in terms of overall tree preservation. So we think that the move to basically bring the cul-de-sac in quite a ways was definitely a good move in terms of tree preservation for the site. And again, all the areas outside of the proposed lots are planned to be dedicated to the city, so the city will have ownership over those areas to make sure that they're preserved in their natural state. There are a couple areas where those preserved trees encroach into those rear lot lines. We've asked that the lot lines be pulled back so that all of the saved trees are within city ownership. In the instance where it gets a little tight in the rear yards, we would require a conservation easement over those proposed preserved trees. And again, they're planning to do a custom build out here. So at this time, DDK would be the primary builder out there. However, they have noted that they may sell off to other custom home builders as well. So there could be a variety of different builders out there with the custom build. And again, they went through this intentional route to again make use of the site being against the bluff edge. Having more of a custom build allows you to have a little bit more free reign in terms of the type of home that you get on those lots. So in that regard, our recommendation tonight is that we're asking you to make a motion to recommend approval of the concept plan for Chaska Bluffs Second, and based on the conditions that are listed in the staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, we do have the applicant here as well to answer questions for you right away.
Any questions for Liz?
Liz, the lot setbacks, I mean, the side lots are the standard with the, since they are showing a lot of three-car garages and so forth, it's still the standard throughout the city? How much space between houses?
Yeah, it's typically 15 feet in between homes, so a 10-foot house side setback and a 5-foot garage side setback, so we typically have the 15-foot separation. They may ask to do more than that because they're larger lots, but the 15-foot separation is typical.
I always worry about that a little bit when you have pie-shaped lots, because down by the street, you may not have room for a driveway that accommodates three-car garages and stuff. That's just a small thing.
Liz, in one of our photos that you had sent over to us, it shows a potential trail. Do you have any other input on that, or?
Well, that was kind of at the beginning of the submission, is there could have been a potential trail connection through the bluff area. However, we were able to get out to the site to see if that's even a potential, and it's very difficult to be able to make that.
Because of the grade there?
Yes, the grade is very steep. It's not adequate for a trail. People can still traverse through it how they want, but we wouldn't recommend that a city trail go through there.
And it is, though, on the city-owned, the
Yes.
city-deeded part, that's open to
Right.
anyone.
Yep. Yep.
Just want to make that clear.
Liz, conditions 12 and 13 get into specific materials or how things should be built on the homes. Is that consistent with the other homes in the neighborhood?
Yes, it is. That's pulled from our anti-monotony code.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Liz. At this time, would like to, anybody who wants to come up and speak to this before we bring it back to the commission? Go ahead, please, come on up, please give your name and address, and
Hi, my
so
name
we can
is,
get it on record.
okay, my name's Ryan Gilmore, and I'm with my wife Natalie, and we're at 4141 Painted Sky Trail, so, can I?
Like,
All right, so what are we doing here? All right, so just to kind of give you I have some questions for sure as to what's going on here. Just to kind of give you an idea, can I step away from the,
or you can
well, no,
use
just
the
use the mouse,
cursor.
I guess, all right. I'm a pointer with my, that's how I present. But we're right here, so we're on this lot right here. This is the street they're proposing, and then this is the third lot. This is where we just built our house. We're 10-year Chaska residents relocating from Connecticut, and we're very happy here right now. And so this is our lot right here. So we were always right at the edge of our lot, there's signs that say, or there were signs that say, no development, because right here, if you, it's not, the mouse keeps disappearing, but, oops. There we go. At the edge of our lot, this is a bluff area. It's right where the actual, I call it a bluff, but it's really where the ravine starts and kind of heads down here. And you can't really, there's a house here with a very large grass lot. It's beautiful. Right here is a lot that's unbuildable. And it leads into the ravine. And right up on, this is our lot line right here, which is only about 5 feet from the edge of our garage. It's a very small, because the house is a little bit bigger on a smaller lot. My question is, if I look at this thing correctly, the bluff line, or the disturbed area, what she points out here is, this mouse keeps disappearing, I'm not sure why. There it is. It looks like the developer is able to develop all of this back here and into what is considered the non-developable area in our backyard. And I would imagine for other residents, it would be the same thing. Do you see what I'm saying, Liz? Like
It goes past the bluff line.
yeah, it goes past the bluff line. I mean, there's markers all around the area that say you can't build past here, but it looks to me like they're gonna develop right in there, in this area where we're not allowed to touch at all. So what,
Yeah,
it's gonna be
maybe-
graded and developed, and not only, well,
Maybe I can clarify a little bit.
Okay.
So the bluff line is this line right here.
It's not the black line, that's the
No.
bluff line.
There's two setbacks that are applied to the bluff line. There's a 30-foot no grade, no mow, which is basically a buffer area. And then there's a 50-foot building setback from that. So
Right, so
you could
where's the-
essentially build up to that line,
well,
unless you have even more restrictive rear yard.
I can build up to what line? Which
The
one?
50-foot.
50-foot setback.
This is a 50-foot
50 feet
setback
from the
edge of
line.
bluff.
So what, between the purple line and the setback, what happens there?
Between here and here,
Yeah,
they could sod up to that line if they wanted to.
because that's the size of their, okay.
Yep.
So they can't, so nothing can happen, you're saying nothing can happen in the white square in between,
Basically, this area right here,
Between purple and yellow.
purple and yellow, yeah, or orange, whatever you prefer.
okay. So this might be a question for our builder. Why wasn't our lot made bigger? If it looks like they can build beyond that, why is it an undisturbable area? We can't do anything with it, but they can.
Well, maybe your
'Cause
developer didn't own that land.
Yeah. I would
sell it to
imagine you're built right up against.
Well, so who is that land owned by? I guess it would be, is it city? So the city owns it? Okay. So the other question I have, and this probably pertains more to, well, I'm gonna have some questions for our developer, only because we paid a premium for a lot that we were told there would be no obstructed view. This is a beautiful,
Show me again where your house is, because I don't think they're
My
putting
house
a
is right here.
Because they're not putting a house behind your
at
house.
1, 2, there's no house, but there's someone's grass.
They could put a shed.
They're gonna put a shed, they're gonna put their RV, I mean, anything could go back here. Right
Right.
now, it's cedar trees and beautiful wild grass, it's a nice area.
What is being missed is behind his house right now, I live right up the block.
You need to come up to the podium if
yeah,
you're
we-
gonna.
You know what?
Help you?
Yeah.
Okay, so am I doing something wrong?
No, I just think part of what he's saying when he's saying
Can you
unobstructed.
please give us your name and,
Your name.
Aaron Picard, I'm at 4201 Millstone Drive, I can show you where I am. I think part of what he's saying when he says unobstructed view is behind his house right now, where they're saying there will be a backyard, it's completely wooded. And what you're saying right here is that's going to go away.
See, this right here,
And
okay.
that's where the neighbors are saying we're having a problem.
See, this looks like it's, no, thank you. I'm getting frustrated here because what this doesn't show is that all this around here is beautiful woods. It's birch trees, it's oaks, I mean, it's the trees that, Liz pointed out, obviously, but we're gonna be looking at, all of us are gonna be looking at yards where we purchased lots where it was gonna be wooded, and there's a major grading problem too, because what this doesn't show, well, maybe it kinda shows, is that you need to see some better pictures of it, because all of this goes in a somewhat steep grade too. And then there's a heavy grade as you enter where this street's supposed to be. It's a steep hill, so how does that affect our drainage, our yards, our everything else? And then you have a nasty retaining pond, which I know why it's there, because you don't want to destroy Creek Road with flooding, I get that. But all this, where's the grading go? Does this become a stream here, where all these lots kind of flow off into this? Does it remain woods? Are there gonna be rocks there that flow into a retaining? You say there's a retaining pond here, but there's a bunch of rocks and grass and mosquito nests that reside around it. How is the grading gonna be? No one's talked about that. It's a very undulating land. This doesn't show that. I mean, you have to go out there and look at it. It's very rolling, and it's a beautiful thing to look at, to be honest with you. And there's not many trees in Chaska, and a lot of these are gonna be taken away, which is it's frustrating.
Yeah, and I
it's
think
farmland. There's billions of places in the farmland to develop.
you
Why
have
here?
really valid questions. And it's a good time for us to explain to you really the process. So this is the concept plan where they're really just showing an idea of what they want to do. A lot of the questions that you're asking should be incorporated at the next phase, at the preliminary step. And they really do have to start showing elevations and grading plans and more detail about what the retention pond looks like. Oftentimes, we even get into landscaping around it so that you can have a better idea of what that will be.
Yeah, okay.
And it's important for you to voice those concerns now, because they're heard and they're added to minutes, and then the developer then has to take that back and really think about what the neighbors' thoughts are.
Yeah, and I understand, just to make sure everyone's clear on this, I understand development. I'm fine with the Chaska growth. I think it's good for our community, but we got to be careful of what we're taking away from the overall topography of this town. A lot of it's flat, but a lot of the trails and everything are fantastic. I mean, the way a lot of it's been developed overall in the city has been great. But another question I have is, and Hun, well, you'll have to come up, but maybe you probably don't want to, but my wife told me she heard that access to downtown, a sidewalk from this large development, from the Harvest development, and from this new development will be, that there's going to be a trail going downtown and perhaps cutting through the woods, like a bike trail, walking trail.
I think Liz
Good
just.
question.
Yeah,
Liz
Liz
just said that.
said that's not,
On one of the plans before, there was another trail that you didn't show.
It was right in this bluff area that I was
Yes.
talking about before,
Yeah.
right here. I could call it bluff, I don't know what the hell else to call it, but, there it is. Like right between this undevelopable area and that we don't own, and this, right, a trail down here. I'm not sure where it would lead or where it would go, how,
Yeah, and I didn't include it on one of my slides. Maybe I can bring it up from here. But it was the same question to Todd asking about the,
If it was going to
trail.
happen, and it isn't.
well, the trail was access to the pond, right? That was the question that was asked.
Yes.
There was another one that was
there was
listed
another
as going
piece
down the
shown
bluff.
So there won't be one that
here.
goes downtown?
No.
No.
No,
But I do
this
have a
was-
question actually about that, just since we're talking here. There's sidewalk that goes up 44, and it stops right at where the kind of the ravine begins, and then it starts again around the Harvest. Is there any,
There will be a connection to
Yes.
that.
there will be?
Yep.
And that's all I
Yep.
really
Yep.
matters, then. That's fine, okay. All right. So I guess Commissioner Bovee?
Yeah, I mean, I
So
think.
you're saying I should wait to voice some of those grading concerns for
No,
the next?
I'm glad you're voicing them now, because they're heard, and the developer then needs to really listen and try to incorporate that into the next round. What I'm saying is, this is not the final. There are many steps in a plan. This is the step one, I would say.
So what is the developer's timeline on wanting to develop this?
They'd like to
Like
start grading this
yesterday?
year. They'd like to start grading this year.
So when would the next meeting be? I mean, just in.
It could
Not an exact date,
happen, it could happen as soon as April. And we will also send out another notification about that meeting. And that's when we'll have more of those detailed plans, like the grading plan elevations, and so forth. We'll have all of the technical engineering drawings at that time.
Okay, because I keep saying our, I mean, we have other residents here that have some concerns. I don't want to take the podium forever, but I mean, maybe my issues are with Robert Thomas, not so much with the city. You can strike that from the record anytime you want, but, we already have a dip in our yard because of the way the grading is, that we're kind of told that this is how it's gonna be. So I want to know, and this is just saying it out there, we can discover it in April when the next meeting is, how is this going to affect our property in which we stand? Because things that are done on one piece of land always affect another piece of land, regardless of whether or not there's a retention pond to retain water, right?
Because we're up on a hill, I'm trying to figure out how that lot will it be leveled so a house can be there? I mean, I don't know how that could actually.
Yeah, and we don't have any of those details right now, and it's obviously something that our engineer will have to look through and make sure that it works for the area.
All right, I mean, even though the size of this whole property has been cut, or the development has been decreased, there's still, it's gonna be really close to where the steep grading is gonna be. So anyone who wants to go back there and explore, there really still isn't gonna be much for people to go back there, not anywhere near what there is now. So I think that should be something of note as well.
Maybe I should comment.
Yeah.
So just for,
So I'm Dave Picorni. I'm representing DDK on this project, and someday I'm going to figure out how to use these.
You got it, Dave.
Like-
You're all right.
Go back to the, well, how does it change? Oh, you're not on the
Well,
plan
you
piece.
can-
Okay. So, I'm going to go back. So this, so the history of this property, 2 years ago, the Klingolet's family partnership, which is 3 brothers and a sister, sold about 50 acres to Traditions, and they kept this property. And they kept the piece that DDK developed to the north. As part of the sale of that property, Traditions was required, actually by the city and by us as the landowners, to do a master plan. So what this plan shows is the master plan that was when Traditions came in with this property. When it was approved, the city was clear. There wasn't a lot of study done on this 24 or 26 lots, whatever it was. But this is what was, if people were buying lots, they would have looked at it, this is what they saw. As we studied it, and I know, Commissioner Cross, you're not going to like this, but trees weren't our top priority. They were close to the top. What really became the biggest issue on this site was it going to be served by a sanitary sewer that was gravity or by a lift station? This plan, this 24 lots, was a lift station. I think everybody, particularly the city engineer, didn't want to see a lift station, and especially for this small of a lot. We didn't really either because they're relatively expensive. And for sure, the planning staff didn't want to see a lift station because it resulted in 24 lots. And the area that's in green on this plan, those trees would have been down too. So that was the disturbed area back in the original plan. When we started looking at it and then concluded, is there a plan that we can do without putting a lift station in? This is the largest area that we could serve, and it ended up being 17 lots. And that's where we really started rethinking this whole development. Because then we said, let's do something that's different than what's happening in the whole heights of Chaska. And actually, I think it's different than probably the community has seen in, I don't know, a number of years. And that's a small subdivision, custom-built homes with not one single home builder. or at the, the track, the national builders, all good guys, and that, but that's what's different here. And rather than 65-foot lots, 85, and most of them, quite frankly, are much closer to 100. But they need to be because of this grade issue. The site is actually tipping and dropping a fair amount. And if we went to narrow lots, the side yards don't work. So that's what's happening out here, is it's a much different kind of development. Now, as it relates to the disturbed areas, wait, I'm going to go to, someday I'm going to figure out. Well, this, so the areas that are not in the brown, all of that we're going to end up deeding to the city. So there's a fair amount more preserved open space. The particular land that we were talking about, I'm going to go to that. So this parcel has always been, or it was part of the original, when Traditions developed it, they dedicated that to the city. And we're dedicating then the property behind. But this area in the Traditions plan, actually, your lot was originally planned to be a walkout. If you go back and look at the original plans, because that hill was all dropping significantly. Because we weren't ready to develop, Traditions went ahead and developed it without a walkout, so it's a, I don't know if it's a lookout.
Lookout.
Full base.
That's a full basement,
Oh, it's
right.
full. Okay.
And so that changed the way our grading plan evolved also. There will be some grading back here, but we're talking about minimal. I mean, a foot or two, that kind of grade. So what you see is a hill. Most of that hill is going to stay. But
the grading will start on that? Like where?
I have a detailed plan, which I can give you. I still have it with me. So you just give your name, I'll just get you the plan. Because even though we're not seeking grading plan approval tonight, we've done it because we needed to figure out how to make the sewer work, to be honest. So that's one of the things. The other point, and we would agree if we could move these, that would be great. Again, we may have some grading issues on where we can put this, break the access point. The other thing that we've been looking at is there a way to not have to have this particular pond. That pond is really there mostly to control erosion that's going into that ravine. So there's maybe a better way to solve that erosion problem that exists there. It's such a small, effectively a very small pond. We can clearly drain everything to the southern pond. So that's one, as we get to the next level, that we're going to look at. Now, I did want to stand up because I knew that Commissioner Cross would say, nice job on preserving trees. Because what happened then when we shifted and started looking at this as a gravity sewer as opposed to a lift station, we had to move it quite a ways to the west and lose lots, but we were able to preserve trees. And I think the reason that you see the area that we are disturbing trees, it's the box elders and cottonwoods. If you go back and look at the older aerials, that area back in the 40s was farmed. The areas where the oaks are was never farmed. And that's why you get that change of tree line in through there. So as Liz said, all of this kind of evolved through the discussions, and I think what we started to realize was if what we needed to do is refocus the kind of development and now go to this large lot, quite frankly, higher priced, different market than what you're seeing in the rest of the Heights of Chaska. We expect these lots, rather than being 100,000, are going to be 200,000. We expect, rather than having, these are going to be at the higher end of prices. I don't want to suggest what they would be at this point, but that type of, the $185 to $200,000+ lots are going to demand a much bigger house. For example, the frontages on our cul-de-sac are basically the frontages that you have on the typical 65-foot lot in the tradition. So we have no issue with front yard, which is a very common one when we, if we had 70-foot cul-de-sac lots, you're absolutely right, that would be an issue. So we are excited about the project. We do have some challenges, and that's, can we make that type of price lot and house work within the neighborhood? If you had to ask me what's our biggest issue, it's can we meet our mission? And one of the ways we may meet the mission is to partner with some other developers so that you can create that variety. And we aren't just far enough along to know that. Historically, the DDK Construction, as a builder, did build the high-end homes. And so they have experience in doing that, and they do have some potential partners that we've been talking to that would come in and do the custom home in this area. So the rest of the conditions and comments that Liz has, we understand all of those. We don't have any issue with that. I love the fact, I think, in the first time I've ever heard the planning staff say they don't want a trail somewhere. And we understand that. Actually, after we put that on the plan and we talked about it, I did the same thing. I went and walked it. I did not walk the whole thing because I was never going to get all the way down. So we realized that's not feasible. Although it would be, if there is some way to even create a designated wood chip trail or something that gets back into it. You may not go all the way down, but that area that we're dedicating with where the flat area the trees are and to the top of the bluff is absolutely beautiful. So create an opportunity for the public to get back there, we think is a good idea.
I have a question for you. So on the very first slide, so on the side of your screen, like the first slide, if you click it, maybe it brings up, yeah. Yep, so just wanted to clarify, so that is the master plan as it originally sat with 2 cul-de-sacs on that development, correct?
Right.
Okay. So for all developers' traditions, Robert Thomas, when they were going through there, that is what was brought through the city and available as a resource for everyone to see what would happen.
Right. I want to
Preliminarily.
It was very conceptual.
Yep. Nope.
Yep. You can even see one of the issues with that concept plan, there wasn't really a solution to stormwater. It doesn't show
Yeah.
any ponds out there.
No, I wanted to clarify that because I think, and I forgot the gentleman's name that lives in the house there. It's important because it was available to see beforehand. And secondly, I actually think the new concept that you have with less homes and getting rid of that cul-de-sac facing down
Right.
towards the bottom of the page, which would be like, I don't know, west? Is that westerly?
South.
South?
That's south, yeah.
That actually helps free their sight lines from the back of their homes, because that would have been, you're looking right into some houses, versus now,
Right.
at least those homes, and not just yours, but the one below and above, well, that one's not a house there, but those sight lines be partially preserved. So I do think that is better. But not to
From their
minimize,
standpoint,
but not to minimize his concern about trees and the viewpoint. But I do think it's nice to know for the commission.
Right. Well, to implement this concept plan, which again, I want to restate was very conceptual, your lots would have been walkouts and the
Yep.
hill would have been dropped 15, 20 feet.
Right.
So whether that's better or worse, personally, I'd rather have been on a walkout. But that's the big change that occurred, well, will occur There's significantly less grading occurring next to the Traditions lots under our plan than what they would have graded had they graded it all at one time.
I know you're not for a grading approval here, and that's, we're
Yep.
getting ahead of ourselves, but do you know on south side of your road, you know, kind of those lots, are they going to be walkouts, flats, lookouts? I mean, do you have an idea
Right?
next to
Yes.
the neighbor,
So,
just based upon
well, I
topography?
believe in, all but 2 of our 17 lots are walkouts.
Walkouts, okay.
Yep,
So your basic higher up in the front yard, slope down to the back.
exactly. And that's, as they were pointing out, as you get to the end of that stub street today, there's a big drop-off.
Yep.
And it continues dropping. So that's where this whole grading operation's got to occur. And that will allow us to, well, to create the walkouts.
Yep,
If we would have our druthers, we would actually have taken the hill area, actually behind their lot, and dropped it further. But because their house exists there, it just, you create too steep a slope in there.
So Dave, will it probably be like lot 1 and 17 that won't be walkouts?
That, I think, is right. It might be 1, 2, and 17.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think one's a lookout, and I'm
But
not-
yeah, I mean, it makes sense it'd be the first lots, the front lots.
Closer to
Okay.
that different grade.
Closest to the other home, all right,
Right.
just to clarify.
And then last thing, just from a timing standpoint, we do plan on coming back here this spring, early summer with the preliminary plat. One of the things we'd like to do is get the grading, at least the rough grading done this summer. We may not come back with a final plat till either late this year or early next year. But quite frankly, I don't think I don't think anybody wants us to be coming in here and doing this grading and bringing fill in, because it is short of fill. Well, when the whole development is done. We would have been better to have done it 2 years ago, from that matter. But there is a fair amount of fill that needs to come into the site.
Dave, and would any of that fill come from the higher development, your the one up,
The villas?
the villas?
No, the villa grading is all done. That was actually short a little fill also,
Okay.
but that's done. It's
So it'll be coming
possible
in.
that we're going to, Traditions may end up with some excess fill, and we've said, fine, when we get this done, you can put it in there, but I doubt that's going to happen. I think it's going to come off-site.
All right, thank you, sir, appreciate the
Info.
added info, and anyone else have any more comments?
I am sorry to have interrupted earlier. Again, I'm Erin Picard. I live at 4201 Millstone, and I'll just show you super quick. This is my lot, right here. I'm really happy to hear that the amount of trees that were originally planned have been reduced as far as how much is gonna come out. I still have concerns about how many trees are gonna come out. Liz, I'm sorry to ask, could you bring up that one picture that showed the actual tree? It was an aerial that showed the tree line. It was in the thing behind it, I think. I'm sorry to, all right. Yeah. So their plan, which I realize you can't see right here, but I like that you can see the trees here, still shows taking out a lot of these trees. I took pictures from my house today. I don't know if it's okay to show you or not. I think it's different to see what we're talking about versus red and green dots on a map. We're talking trees that are 100 feet tall, and I can only imagine that that took 50 years or more to grow. I have concerns about taking down trees like that. I have concerns about the wildlife. There are a minimum of 3 coyotes, because I have seen them literally together, and I know there's more than that. There is a herd of deer, I've seen as many as 10 out at a time, that live in these woods. And the more we take out, the less habitat they have. And in a day and age when we're talking about climate change and wildlife and things like that, I have significant concerns with how many trees and how much habitat we're taking away. Now, I know I'm being hypocritical because my house took away some of that habitat. My house didn't take away trees. So I understand that some trees need to be cut down to make this usable property. But this is still a significant amount of land and habitat and wildlife and trees that aren't gonna come back anytime soon. So I am glad to hear that it's better than it was, but I still think, in my opinion, it's too much, just from a habitat standpoint. I'm also concerned, and I realize we're not talking about grading right now, but this land is all clay. I can tell you, because this is my lot right here, that this land right here is a swamp. All summer, all spring, it's mush. My kids try to go back here and play because they go into the woods, and I mean, they're sinking into their waists. So I do have concerns when I hear you needed one type of, and I don't know what a lift or whatever it was called is, and now it's gonna be gravity. I get concerned when I hear, well, we could get it to a max of 17 with the gravity. That concerns me, a max of, when this is all marshy swamp. I disagree that you could get rid of one of those. The pond they were talking about getting rid of is right here, which that's directly behind my house, and I can tell you that that's just floating water. In the spring and in the summer, it's flooded. So I do have some concerns about the draining and the sewage and how well that's honestly gonna be handled when we're talking about, 17 very large homes. We've heard that a number of times. I have one of the largest homes that Robert Thomas builds. It's a 5-bedroom, 6,000 square foot home. I have 5 bathrooms, a laundry room. You get 17 homes pushing all that stuff through. I'm concerned about the sewage when there's already a lot of water in the land and in the landscape as it is. And the more trees you take down, the worse that problem gets. Because you don't have root systems, you don't have things to help mitigate some of that drainage and things like that. So that's all I wanted to say. I knew from the beginning there would be a cul-de-sac here. I understand that. I'm concerned with the level of trees being taken down, and I'm concerned about how the water is going to be managed when the clay, I mean, that's what Chaska was built on. The bricks behind you are Chaska bricks. It's clay soil. So I am concerned about how the water is going to be managed, and that does feed into trees and wildlife as well. Yes,
Just
sir.
to clarify, we're talking about, we're not septic here, right? This is going to connect to like wastewater through pipes?
Yes.
Yeah,
This isn't going to be like
There won't be
drained
any
into a
sewage.
field?
It's
It's
stormwater.
storm-
Right, I'm sorry.
City.
I may
Yeah.
be misusing terms. This isn't my
Because
area
you're
of
saying
expertise.
sewer, I thought maybe you were thinking
Just
like
wanted to
septic
clarify.
fields
No,
or
I'm just
something.
talking, water, wastewater, storm water, whatever it is that you're
Rainwater.
flushing away from your house or
Sure.
that's coming out of the drains, it has to go somewhere.
Yep.
And right now, I can tell you that where there is no development, it's constantly water.
Right.
So I'm concerned about how it's gonna drain, and when the city said, you have to have one type of drainage system, now you can have this other one, but you're maxing the capacity.
So I'll elaborate on that. What we were talking about was a sewer. So a lift station is because you have sewage above a certain grade, you can't use gravity. So when you flush your toilet, it goes into the pipes and just follows gravity to like the wastewater treatment facility. Where a lift station, you need to like grind it and pump it up to a certain point to bring it back down. So it's different than wastewater.
Okay.
Like on the property.
Sure.
We were talking about sewage.
But when we're talking about potentially maxing things out, there's not concerns that we're
No, so
putting
that's
too
just-
much in a pipe that can't take it.
No, and, the fluid engineers
Right,
would
that's why we-
identify pipes a certain
Engineers.
size. I mean, there's neighborhoods that are much bigger
Sure.
than this. So, but I do want to go back to your point on the water on the land. Not that I'm advocating for one party or the other, but you will find when you develop a property that you actually wind up having some of those problems go away because they're forced to mitigate water issues and provide ponding and grading, and you got grass. And so what once was not traversable usually becomes more habitable for you to walk on. So because right now it's just a natural state, and that's great, but in that you're going to correct those issues. They're forced to with grading and with storm sewer and with collector and drain. And so you actually wind up having yards that kids can play in versus soil that's unsuitable. And yes, Chaska is clay, my house is on clay too.
Yep, no, I
So-
appreciate hearing that, things that I wouldn't know, so I just want to make sure that at least
Yeah,
I've stated my concern.
Very much so. And then just to elaborate, we're at concept here. So it's like, hey, I kind of want to do this on the site. And then they have to take it through to all the engineers. They got to get like, wastewater studies, sewer studies, they got to do topography, grading studies. Then they come back and say that we worked with all the engineers. We've designed it to meet all the standards. Everything's going to work, and here's what it looks like today. And so that's what will be the next meeting,
Sure,
just to give you kind of how this goes.
sure.
Go ahead.
Aaron, so what you have, so I live right 4499 Millstone, right on the corner there.
Yeah.
What you have in your backyard there, or where your kids are playing and up to their waist, did you say?
They go out there, there's a lot of, it wouldn't be like this, obviously, once they develop it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of burrs or brambles that get stuck to them, but I mean, it's very
Yep.
mushy.
So when they filled that, that's kind of rough grade,
Mm-hmm.
and they weren't quite sure what it was gonna look like. So once they come in and do whatever they do next, they'll bring it to final grade, and that, like Rob was saying,
Sure.
that's gonna make a lot of those problems go away.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the engineering will help.
Absolutely. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you.
Thank you for speaking up. Anyone else? Okay, then we'll bring it back to the commission for any further comment before we vote on the concept.
I'll reiterate what everybody else has said. I'm just glad to see it shrink and preserve as many trees as possible in there.
Agreed.
And I will say, indeed, most of the trees that they're going to pull out, that right at that beginning, will be what we would call weed trees. The aspens, the cottonwoods, they're big. But they're not a lifelong tree. Your oaks are your lifelong trees. And there are a few, I think there's a couple hickories in there and a few strays, other strays and a few basswoods. But as a rule, you're removing trees that are not a lifelong tree. They are, they're the quick get in. If I got a spot to grow and there's sunshine, I will grow.
After the agriculture stopped.
Yeah, after the agricultural stopped.
So,
So I'll just state that.
all right. Anyone else? Okay, I think we've had good discussion on this. I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. Motion to recommend to City Council approval of the Chaska Bluffs second concept plan for a 17-lot subdivision on the Klingelhutz property on the southwest Chaska growth area, subject to the following, 25 conditions.
I
Can I
will,
get a second, please?
I will second it, and I'm saying Liz very carefully made sure there's 25 conditions, and I appreciated you being very careful in getting them in. And I'll second it.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Same sign, motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for your input. Thank you, Dave, for your information, and Liz for your very good presentation there. So we will move on to 7B on the agenda, which is to approve the preliminary site and building plan for QualiTech Incorporated, PC number 2020-03. Liz, it's all yours once again.
Thank you so much. Just give me a second while I pull this up. All right. Thank you, members of the Planning Commission. We have a preliminary site and building plan in front of you, specifically for the business QualiTech Incorporated, and they're located at 150 Jonathan Boulevard North. So here's a pretty zoomed out perspective of where this site is located. It is in our northern industrial park, pretty close to well, I would say pretty central within that industrial park there. They're right at the end of the cul-de-sac. And here's a more zoomed-in view of that site. They're right at the bulb of the cul-de-sac of Jonathan Boulevard North. Mostly industrial land abuts this area. The city of Chanhassen is on its eastern border. However, the area that has been planned and proposed on this eastern side is also for industrial, so there's not any of the conflict of land uses going on there. We have also shared the plans with the city of Chanhassen and have not received any negative feedback at this point. So in terms of a background of the site itself, QualiTech, which was formerly known as Nutritech when it first came in for their approvals, they specialize in food processing and the production of plant and animal nutrition products, and that is the business that they provide there and what they will continue to do. Can you?
Want to close
Please,
that?
yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
You're welcome. So they got their original building plan approvals in 1985. And at that time, they proposed a 45,000 square foot building. Also at that time, they did show a 36,000 square foot building addition attached to that. However, it was noted in those approvals that that building addition did have to come back for additional site and building plan approval on the site in order to make it valid. There was a question of parking needs in terms of the size of that building addition, so they wanted it to go through a separate process to make sure parking was adequately serving the building addition. So that's why we have this in front of you tonight. They are asking for a preliminary site and building plan approval, which is the first of two steps with us. They'll also have to come back for a final site and building plan with us as well. But the preliminary site and building plan approval is for a 26,750 square foot building addition that will also incorporate 2 additional loading docks and the expansion of the parking lot on site. They are in an industrial zoning district, so what they're proposing out there is still consistent with the zoning. So for existing conditions, they have provided us a plan that basically shows the existing building footprint out there and how it accesses Jonathan Boulevard North. The site itself is a little under 5 acres in size. The existing building is 45,000 square feet. They have also installed a 75 stall parking lot that's mostly on the western and some on the northern portions of the site. This was the parking that was required during their original approval, so they did construct what they showed in the 1985 approvals. They also have 2 existing loading docks on the front side or north side of the building, which they will be expanding. So there are 2 accesses onto North Jonathan Boulevard. The first one provides access to that western parking lot, and then just adjacent to that is another ingress and egress point to access the remainder of the parking lot in the loading dock area. And those accesses will remain in their current location even with this building addition. And then just because it's worth noting, there is a 30-foot wide drainage and utility easement on the eastern side, and they do plan to maintain that and not impact that as a part of this building addition.
That's on the city line, right?
Yes, it is. So this is the site plan showing the building addition, so it's pretty much in line with the current building footprint. We're just extending it out a ways on the eastern side. Again, that's 26,750 square feet. You can also see the expansion a little bit to the loading dock area as well as the parking lot on the north and east sides of the building. So with this building addition size, They are required to have 77 parking stalls based on the square footage and use that they're proposing there. However, they're only constructing 34 parking stalls as a part of this building addition, and the remainder they will show as proof of parking. So in the event that they need the additional parking on site, they have shown on a plan how it can work and be accessed, and do so when it's needed. We don't want them to construct anything that's unneeded right now or unnecessary impervious pavement. So providing a proof of parking exhibit is more than adequate to show how they meet parking out there, which I'll show in the next slide. The business owner has also commented that the parking, even right now, is sufficient for their building, and with the added parking, it will be sufficient to serve the building addition and employees they're adding. I believe they're only adding 2 additional employees even with this building expansion. The 2 additional loading docks are kind of highlighted in this darker, bolder hue, and that will be adjacent to where the other loading docks are. They will be kind of rounding out this turning area as well to make for more convenient movements for trucks on the site. I'll show an exhibit showing how they can make that work with the semis out there. So everything is being modified accordingly. And then lastly, due to the grade changes on the north side here, they do have to install a retaining wall with the expansion of the parking lot and loading dock area. And this ranges in height from 3 to 7 feet. That profile basically faces the building and not adjacent properties. They're also doing a level of landscaping around it too to kind of help break up the massing there. Here's the parking, our proof of parking exhibit. So there's added parking stalls kind of along the loading dock area, which will still adequately serve the loading dock area and their turning movements. And then they've also shown additional stalls on that eastern side. Again, this is only in the event that they need the parking. They have stated that with the added 34 stalls, they're going to be more than adequate for their parking needs.
So everything on the eastern side would be done if needed then?
Right. Basically, kind of evening this off on the north and south sides is only in the event that they need it. Here's the truck turning plan. So trucks will enter this site on the easterly-most access point, basically turn in, kind of utilize the parking lot area to back into those loading dock stalls. And then they can easily turn around without having to back up and gain access back out to the street system. And then here's the landscape plan, and it's actually a pretty hefty landscape plan. They are planning to restore even the existing plantings that they have on site in addition to what's required for the building addition. So the quantities and caliber sizes and so forth are more than adequate to serve both the existing and the building addition for the site. They're also showing plantings around the retaining wall, screening on the east side towards Chanhassen, and then bolstering up the screening along the bulb of the cul-de-sac, which was basically put in place for screening of the loading dock. They didn't have a lot of options of where to put the loading dock. We don't typically see them on the front side of the building, but due to the very significant grade changes in the site, this was their only option. So screening was put in place at this edge, which they are planning to add more to. I think our only comment is there's a couple plantings located outside of property lines, and we'll just need to get that revised on their final plan. And then here's the photometric plan. Again, they meet our lighting ordinance in terms of cast off and foot candles, and then the fixtures proposed are also in line with our ordinance requirements. Here are the building elevations. Again, they're only showing what they're proposing, and then they've shown kind of where the existing building elevation cuts off as well. So they're proposing precast concrete panels, which is a pretty typical material in industrial design. Probably the only notable thing is the application of the precast panels that they're using. The original building was made of precast panels with concrete stems, which was necessary back in the time of when they were building. Those stems were utilized for roof structural support. And now, 35 years later, we have more conventional systems to be able to support those roof structures. These concrete stems just are obsolete and not needed. So it's just not a typical application on the buildings anymore. So they're planning your typical precast concrete panels. It'll be a very, very similar color to the existing out there. So there should be a pretty seamless change, or not even change, between the new and the old. And just to note, back when they got 1985 approvals, we didn't have any building design and materials ordinance in play back then. So we don't typically apply that on a building addition, as it would create a pretty imbalanced look for the building if we were to have them put in windows and brick and so forth on the newer side of things. So what we typically ask applicants to do is to provide a more seamless approach to the building additions that are provided on existing buildings.
I had a question.
Yeah.
If you go back one slide or two that shows, yeah, right there. On the edge of the building, maybe you don't know, maybe the applicant does, that they're expanding onto, is the wall a knockout wall? And it'll be supported with columns at that joint, if you will, and then it's all open? Or is there gonna be a panel wall with like maybe cutouts to access, you know, like forklift cutouts or man door cutouts? Because the question I have is just from a standpoint of, surely they have to look at this, because the two new docks, I mean, the functionality of that first dock is zero if that wall is there.
Right, exactly. And I'll probably have them come up and clarify
Yep.
kind of what the okay. We'll do that
Just
one.
curious,
I'm
yeah.
almost done wrapping up here, so we'll
Yep.
have him come up and
All right.
do that. Yeah, so the height will be maintained, color is gonna be maintained, everything's gonna fit in pretty well. So we are asking you to make a motion to recommend approval of the preliminary site and building plan for QualiTech at 150 Jonathan Boulevard North, subject to the conditions that are listed in the staff report. I'll hand it over to the applicants now to answer any other questions you may have, unless, okay.
Yeah, I do have a question.
Sure.
Since that parking on the east side there, that you said is only proof of parking as opposed to,
Nope, everything that's shown here
Okay.
is what they're planning to install.
okay, so is there indeed water storage, stormwater chamber underneath that?
Yes, yes.
And how is that going to be dealt with, you know, if it gets full or their use? So it'll be a question for them.
Probably the applicant.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure about
Sure.
those two. That's,
What's the shadowing on that picture?
Huh?
What's the shadowing?
I think basically where they're planning to restore some of the area to be sod.
Okay, got it. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
All
Okay, I
right, I'll
guess,
invite 'em up then.
Yep.
thank you, Liz. And if the applicant wants to come up and answer any additional questions, we'd appreciate that.
First off, thank you so much for listening to us today and for proposing these questions and looking at this building expansion. My name is Whitney Stramer. I am part of the civil engineering team with ISG, and I designed the site. So site-related design questions can go to me. I currently reside in Eden Prairie, Minnesota.
Thank you.
And my name is Joe Wagner. I'm the project manager with ISG, working with the client QualiTech, and also could answer any questions regarding the building and elevations, that type of thing as well. So thanks for your time.
Okay.
So I just
Anybody?
had that question with regards to the wall, the functionality.
Sure. Let's see. Go to the floor plan. Oops. So I guess if I understand it correctly, as you're asking, is this existing wall that we're butting up to?
Yep.
Our intent is to basically cut out the precast from the north wall down to where the processing labs start in this area. So that'll be opened up, but butted into at the roof line. So that it will allow QualiTech to bring
Yeah,
forklifts,
that
things
was
of that
my
nature
question,
through.
'cause it
Yeah.
has to,
And then
basically.
there'll be another opening down here to get to the process rooms and for the stacking of the product as well.
Okay.
With that, if there's any other questions, let us know. As always, I will talk about the stormwater piece.
Actually, I'm curious about what is the waste product of this building and where is that handled at? Is it at your loading docks or is there another entrance or exit where whatever the bulk, whatever it is, leaves?
So I can speak to that a little bit. The product comes in bulk on pallets. It also gets brought in containers if it's wet or a liquid. Those products then are housed in the pallet area and then brought into these process rooms where they're brought into hoppers, ovens, mixing type equipment to make the flavor packets that then goes out to their clients that they make product for. So in general, there is no byproduct or waste. After the product is made, they do have to pressure wash the space, which are basically, in a sense, clean rooms, and then that gets processed, the water and the dust that remained, typically,
You have
that's
some
all
sort
there
of
really
gray
is.
water system
Yep,
that cleans
exactly.
that before it goes
Yep.
into the city. Yep.
Were you asking more about like trash, just like general trash, or? if
Well,
there's any-
well, yeah, kind of, but if the bulk of what, if they're rearranging the bulk of what they get into different components, then basically you have containers that the stuff came in that could be trash, or it could be, or, I'm just wondering because
Because nothing's changing here. It's the same business. that
yes,
they've
it's
always
same
had.
business, and I
QualiTech.
couldn't really see any exit door from before of where trash would have gone out, except the loading docks.
Yeah, there is an existing trash compactor here.
There we go.
And then if I recall, I think they do have actual trash dumpsters for waste per se that are all in that general vicinity.
And the reason why those are pointed out is because that area is not being impacted, so we haven't highlighted it just because nothing is moving, because those are to remain in the same location.
Got it.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, what does QualiTech make? Just so I understand, like what the build, what is the product? What's the product? What are we making here?
Megan Hegland. I'm a value stream manager with QualiTech. So at our division at 150 Jonathan Lane, we manufacture food flavor. So if you think about the flavor coating that you see on your children's Fruit Loops, we manufacture that. We manufacture flavor, like specialty flavors for like Oreo. When you see an Oreo birthday cake, we're manufacturing the birthday cake flavor that's going into the Oreo. We manufacture like a lime flavor, so most of your lime flavored tortillas. We actually manufacture the lime flavor that is coating that tortilla. So a lot of the products that we manufacture are natural. So when it comes to waste, most of our Most of the waste byproduct is natural, and we actually partner with pig farmers to dispose of the bulk waste that we produce. So that's where we don't have a lot of kind of your byproduct waste that you can find in manufacturing. Most of the products we're bringing in are cornflakes and dextrose and sugar. But we manufacture a variety of fun flavors that go into products you eat almost every day.
Fascinating. So is this, do you have multiple locations, or is this location?
Yeah, they do. We have another location in Chaska as well, but they manufacture food nutrition. So the technology is very much the same. So
Yeah.
essentially, when we manufacture food flavor, we are pelletizing it, so it looks like little rabbit food. And we sell it to companies like General Mills, who then process that into their product. So the other facility is located off Hazeltine Drive.
Yeah.
And again, they manufacture animal products, so they pelletize nutrients, yep, dog food, pet food, products like that.
So the larger company buys the flavor from you in a pellet form, more or less,
More
or
or
powder
less.
or a liquid, and then they take it and put it into their product.
Exactly.
That's
Yep.
interesting.
Most of our product isn't ready to eat, I guess you could say.
Right.
Yep, most of it is,
It'd be like,
Well,
it'd be like
yeah,
drinking,
it's
it'd be like drinking vanilla extract, like you don't want to do that.
right, yep. So most of our product is a secondary product that's going into an end.
I think that's great. I think it's fascinating that.
The
that a
fun- yeah,
company
it's a
doing
fun
that,
company.
And then it's, you know, it's not been cannibalized by like a car deal or something,
Absolutely.
you know?
And how long
it's
do you-
fascinating.
Ben in Chaska, just so everybody knows that, who isn't aware.
The company itself?
Yeah.
Oh, it was the original facility was,
85.
yep, so our facility was founded in 85. The company itself has been around for 46 years. They started at a previous building, but the food flavor came out in the 80s. They're also in plant nutrition in California.
Well-established
Natural plant
Chaska company.
Absolutely. The family, it's family run. The family lives and resides in Chaska.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's, the stormwater is still, I hadn't forgotten that.
I hadn't either. It's one of my favorite things to talk about.
More fascinating stuff.
Will last as long as trees.
It might be longer someday. So I don't know if there's a great footprint that shows, you can kind of see it right here. It's very faint,
Yep.
but the question was essentially about the underground detention system. One, how does that work? And two, where does that go if it was to get full? So as you can see with our site, we're tight. It's a small lot. There isn't really any area to do a wet pond or an infiltration basin. So an underground detention system acts the exact same as that. So it provides storage for your stormwater. So think of it as an infiltration basin that's underground. So this one is a chamber system. This one has 3 chamber systems. The first thing that it does when the stormwater enters is it goes into an isolator row. Within that row, essentially there are different materials like your sand that collects and it filters through the stormwater and treats it. So your kind of pre-treatment that you typically see with an infiltration basin. And then it'll go, so everything that's collecting, backing up, will go through that row first. And then it will continue and essentially snake through these 3 rows over time. And then at the end, which is located right over here, there is an outlet control structure. And so the structure, essentially when you're looking at it from when you're walking, looks like a typical storm manhole. Inside there is a plate, which is a weir, and it has different orifices in that control how much rate is going out of the underground detention system, so meeting your stormwater requirements for city and for Carver County. And then that will slowly go out and go into this flared end section or a culvert that drains out. So all of your stormwater is being treated underground and will then outlet with treatment, essentially being treated prior. The other thing with that too is underground detention basins, like infiltration basins, do have maintenance that is needed, it is less and it's a lot easier because essentially what you can do is anything, if it gets clogged up, you take a vacuum, you pop open one of the structures, suck it out, and put in a new material. And all it is kind of your non-intrusive vacuum truck. It just has a hose attachment, and then that gets disposed of.
Okay. Just, is this the water that's going into it, is parking lot water, or does it include roof water?
So everything is going to be collected for the building addition to this underground system. Everything that was previously in the existing building is still connecting as it is with the existing stormwater. It's not really shown here, but it connects in through this area, and then it shows that it connects all the way over into the existing system.
Okay.
So everything created on site is being treated prior to leaving.
Thank you.
Yep.
And what is the existing system for treatment?
For the storm, it's just roof drain collections, and then it's connecting in. There wasn't any existing treatment needs.
Okay,
We are
it's
improving
just
that.
surface flow to the west, and it flows
Yeah, so the roof drains
down
connect.
to the wetland?
Roof drains on the back will connect, will just drain out, and then the rest
Okay.
of it in this loading dock area and part of the roof connect here and then go to this structure, which we are improving because right now we did find that it doesn't have adequate depth for the rates that are being brought to this area, and then we'll connect to the city system. So we will be improving the drainage in this area specifically, just because right now, one, we're gonna be impacting it, and two, it obviously doesn't serve loading docks properly.
So what's being retained in those tanks are any of the new paved areas and the addition itself, any hard surfaces?
The other thing that I would like to mention that isn't shown on here that we're working through right now with the city and the watershed is adding permeable pavers as well. And those are proposed to be within the parking stall locations. So that way they can be better maintained over time. And so when trucks are coming in, they won't be driving into them in this area. So they'll better preserve, so additional treatment prior.
That's great.
Perfect. Okay.
Just an additional question with the loading dock area. I recognize that it's existing and it's an odd place for it. Any concerns about the trucks kind of backing into now where cars are going to be parked and?
Oh, into this space up here on your north. So no, so this design right here is showing the largest vehicle. It's WB67 with the full bed. That's not what they always utilize, but it's showing that we did widen that drive specifically. I don't have dimensions on this. It can be provided, but it is wider than your standard driving lane for that reason.
To accommodate standard like 53-foot trailer
Yeah.
Yep.
turn, yeah.
Yeah, I forgot the total length of the WB67. It's over 80 feet with that
The-
bed.
Tractor and trailer, right?
And I will add to the additional parking spaces, again, are being added due to the expansion requirements. All of the staff do utilize the other existing parking lot. Not only because from a capacity standpoint, that's what we need. It is a clean facility, and we have a controlled entrance. So all of the employees are going to have to still utilize the main entrance to ensure that they're flowing through the clean rooms before they can enter the manufacturing facility. So the parking lot along the expansion is not going to be utilized. But per the.
Is required per code.
Yep.
Yeah.
But per the truck evaluations, they've got more than enough space, even if it was
Okay.
utilized.
Okay.
Yeah, and there are two other points to be made with that. One, we will be updating all the ADA parking stalls to be meeting their parking count of what's required. And then the secondary item too is, it was a little bit misleading at first. So this right here will be concrete pavement, and the reason why it looks like it's larger is just because this area we did find wasn't surviving or thriving as well. So we're proposing to do further concrete pavement in this area, whereas current existing only goes up to this space. So that's only to further improve and increase. Yeah, it's a little misleading. So people think that the trucks will park up to here, when in actuality, when they're parked, they're only to this area. Same thing with this back here.
Okay, thank you.
One more. Just curious, but do you see adding more jobs then also?
2 more people.
2 more? Okay.
Yeah.
One of the driving forces for the expansion is within the current space, we are at capacity with our existing customer base. With new technology within the food flavor products, we have an opportunity to continue to increase and grow the business. So with current capacity, we're looking at adding 2 to 5 when we first move into the building. But we are to the point where if we don't expand, there's no opportunity for growth. So what this is going to do is allow us to continue to grow. We've planned for 10 years. So we have a tremendous amount of opportunity to continue to grow the business. So the immediate need is going to be 2 to 5 to accommodate some increase in production. We're also going to be bringing in, we currently rent warehouse space in Shakopee. So this is going to allow us to consolidate that warehouse into this facility. But we're very excited and hopeful to continue to grow.
That's a big headache out of the way.
It is, absolutely.
All right. Anyone else?
I'm just happy that someone's happy in Chaska and they want to enlarge in Chaska and we can make it work.
And you went over and above on the landscape plan.
I like it.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
That's a good Chaska company. Okay. All right, doesn't sound like we have any more questions, so thank you very much, I appreciate it. Any further discussion as a commission? If not, I'll entertain a motion for this as well.
I'll make a motion
All right.
to,
You want to read it?
my app crashed. Yep. Motion to recommend approval of city council preliminary site and building plan for QualiTech PC 2020-03, subject to the following 4 conditions.
Oh,
Well,
sorry.
13 conditions.
My fault. Second by Commissioner Seiler. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you very much, and congratulations. All right, let's move on to other business, which is 8A. We will receive in the January 13th Park Board meeting minutes. We'll receive in the December 16th, January 6th, and January 7th City Council minutes, and receive in the January 6th EDA meeting minutes. That being done, let's take it around the horn. Commissioner Seiler, you want to start? Got anything?
Oh, welcome our new Commissioner Riley to the Planning Commission.
Stole my
Yeah,
thunder.
welcome.
I agree. You asked me first.
Well, thank you.
All right.
Nothing else.
Bansky, Commissioner Cross?
I do, unfortunately. Liz is going to get up something for me, but I can talk about something else while she's doing it. When I was out in the tradition area and walking around, and what I was getting unsolicited comments about the fact that we're adding all the houses, but the school district bond did not get passed.
Sorry, I couldn't.
Yeah, we're all sorry.
And I was explaining we didn't have any control over the,
Other than your vote.
yeah. Correct. And so, but there is a great concern that all those houses are going in and the school system is not growing. And I got that comment from more than one person. And I did explain that I had no real help in that area. Why I asked Liz to draw this up, when this popped up for QualiTech, I couldn't help but notice the water. Most of Jonathan, that area that was Jonathan industrial area, was built before we had rules. And it's so very obvious with the shadows in the pond, in Lake Hazeltine, I believe I'm correct, that things are falling into it. A lot of stuff is falling into it by our plumes, I think is the right word for this stuff. And to retrofit it for our stormwater control ponds cannot really occur. And so that's why I was very glad to hear about the stormwater that the company was going to do. I'm hoping that all our brand-new members really remember this. So when we come up with stormwater ponds in our development, we insist that they're made large enough to handle what comes off of the parking lots. When I look at this, I'm thinking, on the south side, you don't see it. That's housing as a whole. On the north side, it's parking lots and business and so forth. And maybe the city can ask, and right now it would be probably just an ask, if our industrial people would at least sweep their parking lots in the spring and get the sand and any residue salt off and saved for next year, because this lake probably is dying just because of the junk going into it. And that's why when you look at that, it isn't very nice looking. What you're seeing over on the other way, that nice little green look on that is, that's the upper part of the system that goes all the way down through Jonathan. And the businesses there are apparently taking care of things.
It's pretty it's pretty prevalent. If you look at just your Apple Maps and look at Lake Hazeltine compared to like zoom out and look at Lake Anne, Lake Susan, Lake Lucy.
Sure.
Hazeltine is solid green on this map. And Lake Anne and Lake Lucy, they look like normal water.
Yes.
Like, so, I mean, you can see, I mean, I can see what you're saying. You can definitely see it right on an aerial.
Yes, on the aerials at this time of the year or whenever it was, it came out just perfect. And we have to start paying attention. As I say, we probably can't retrofit, but we can ask.
What do you think causes it? Is that an algae bloom situation with too much nitrogen and stuff like that?
Oh, it could be anything. It could be sand, it could be salt, it could be.
Yeah, because
The golf course uses a lot of fertilizer
Hazeltine's
over
right
there, too.
It's-
yeah, well, that's interesting because
Businesses on
Lake
the other side.
Bavaria, you know, right in my neighborhood, the town course is,
Well,
Cleaner, too.
but it doesn't, the town course doesn't butt up to the lake.
no,
which-
not exactly. There's a little wood
Which
border.
Hazeltine does.
Yeah, there's a little wood border.
And it also doesn't have industrial around it. like-
Yes. So I'm just saying this just because we've got new members, and here is a perfect example of what would have been nice to be doing back in the 70s and 80s, but we're not. But I'm very glad, that's why I asked about what those stormwater things were underground at QualiTech. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Could be a depth thing. Could be.
Bavaria is a shallow lake also.
Do we know on their stormwater prevention, or their storage treatment, is there a routine maintenance on that, or is there a schedule on that, or?
I'm sure as part of the stormwater approval that they'll go through, there's maintenance requirements.
But in answer to your question, most commercial buildings with underwater storage like that, yes, there's routine maintenance that's handled by management.
Okay. Is that like an
Seasonal.
annual thing or a 5-year
Usually
thing?
seasonal
Oh,
for
okay.
maintenance and then You know, infrastructure, I'm not sure, but generally, certainly seasonal, almost all.
We have the same system over at Fireman's Park in the parking lot. Some of it we reuse in irrigation, and some of it cycles out, because there isn't really room in the downtown area, kind of like this. You know, in the 1850s, there wasn't storm pond provisions, and so the downtown is in the same really position. And so we're trying to figure out ways to do something is always a challenge.
Commissioner Brass, you got anything to add?
I don't this week, thanks.
Okay.
I'm not
Commissioner
sure what
Bowley?
is shareable, but I wondered if you could give a quick update on City Square West.
I can. The city has, city council has authorized the city to enter into purchase agreements to purchase the properties over there, specifically to buy the strip center and enter into purchase agreements on the bank and the post office. And on Monday, we also sent out and made available the request for qualifications to find a preferred developer that we can work with on the City Square West site to come up with kind of a further development plan, an implementable development plan for that site. And so we chose to go with the qualification part of it rather than a proposal because we want to work with the entity, the developer, really collaboratively to come up with a solution that works for everybody rather than having them just tell us a solution. We've invested a lot into it already and want to work on that. And so we would anticipate that sometime mid-April, we'd have a developer on board and we would start working towards moving forward on that project. Hopefully, sometime maybe in the fall, you'd start to see plans and development plans for that site. And then we'd actually enter into a development agreement with that developer, developers, whoever it happens to be, to move forward with that. And so, so we're moving forward on multiple fronts with that piece. And we've spent a lot of time so far talking with the property owners, talking with development groups, and also talking with the existing tenants, trying to work through all of the issues, which has taken a fair amount of time, but it's worth it to try and make sure everybody's on the same page as we move forward. And so we're excited to see that project moving forward, and also trying to, at the same time, move forward the library project as well. And so that also was complicated a little bit by the school vote.
Yes.
And so, but we're also working on that as well because there's options everywhere. And so we're trying to see what we can do on that. And so we'll have more to report later. But at this point, we're excited to be moving towards coming up with some purchase agreements with the three property owners over there. And then also trying to start to find a developer to work with on making the project a reality, which would be really exciting.
That's great. Thank you. I'm excited to see the ball moving forward.
Is there any new info on China Pagoda on that whole deal?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
Our new commissioner, you have any input or questions or?
No, I'm excited to be here and, looking forward to working with all of you. And, I enjoyed the meeting today, particularly the first presentation by the citizens to hear their comments and concerns. And, I'm looking forward to seeing that particular project go through the three phases of what we do here. So, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. All right. Commissioner Olson, anything?
Nothing here.
All right, and I have nothing more to add, so I'll take a motion to adjourn. Urbanski
I'll second it.
and Brass. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
You want these, Liz?
Oh, yeah, I packed.